this way a bit. Okay.
Hello, welcome everybody to the first ALLi podcast of the new year. I'm Debbie Young and this is David Penny, and
Hello.
We're here to answer questions that have been sent over the Christmas period and a little bit before since our previous podcast. All sorts of questions covering mostly aspects of marketing and promotion this time, actually. If you've got any questions for the next time, save them up and send them in for next time, and we'll get through as many as we can. And today we're going to kick off with some questions about production issues and setting your book up for effective marketing as you put it out there to the public. Now we had an interesting question from a very nice lady called Fiona Fraser-Thompson, who in fact has solved her problem since she asked about it. But what was happening was that her margins were jumping about when she was formatting her book, and she wasn't having much luck with it, and ended up having some assistance from her very kind editor to sort her out. But this is a really common problem, especially when you're first starting out. And the best thing to do is to really master whatever program you're working. Do a bit of a practice run and get used to the way that it actually works. I format my books in Word, the interiors in Word, and there are a few strategic things that will make all the difference to whether you can do it successfully or not. First point is to use Word's built-in styles, where you can set up various kinds of styles for things like titles, chapter headings, indented paragraphs, undented paragraphs, all that sort of thing. You set those up to suit yourself, and then you apply those styles to all the different parts of the book as you go through. The other thing that you need to master is the section breaks, which helps you get the page breaks in the right place and get the page numbering. It drives you bonkers when you first try to do it, but the good news is that every time you do another book, it gets a little bit easier, and as with anything, you learn by doing. And as Fiona has found out, so well done, Fiona, for conquering that. Dave, you use something different, don't you?
I do.
I
still finish up with the document in Word, but in effect, it can be any text editor, but it has to be a Word doc. And I use a piece of software called Vellum, which isn't free. It is a paid-for piece of software, but in my opinion, if you're going to be producing a whole set of novels or short stories or whatever, it's well worth the investment. It's about $120 for the ebook version and maybe another $100 to do print versions. But basically, it will import an entire Word document. It will recognize all the chapters, and it will actually number them correctly, even if you have them wrong in your Word doc.
That's just witchcraft, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
My current whip, I deleted a chapter and I left it, so it went from chapter 27 to 29. And I imported into Vellum, and he said, "Oh, don't be silly." It went 27, 28, 29, so I now got one chapter less at the end. And it just does it beautifully, and it does a print book as well. So if, as Fiona was brave enough to state, she's a total technophobe, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. A lot of writers are. Something like Vellum or maybe some other paid service is a great way to go.
Yeah.
Because if you don't like the technology, then concentrate on what you do love doing and what you're good at, and write great books, and allow somebody else or a piece of software to do the formatting for you. Oh, and one thing Debbie forgot to mention is that you may notice that this is a totally different layout to normal because my internet's not working. So I'm actually sitting in Debbie's lovely little office in beautiful Cotswolds Village, and we're sitting side by side.
Very cozy it is too.
It is.
So that's great. All of those formatting issues we've got, and those different programs, if you want to know more about them, we've got posts on formatting ebooks and print books with Word, and also on formatting books with Vellum, all over on the ALLi blog, which is www.selfpublishingadvice.org. So if you just go in and put the keywords in the search engine, you'll find those really useful posts. So having solved that problem, moving on to how to position your book in the marketplace, and we've got two different questions on different aspects of positioning your book in the market in the right place. And we've got First of all, a question from JP about branding.
Yeah, he points out that he's doing a rebranding. Oh, sorry, there's a question about. Sorry, he wants to pre-launch his books, and he's rebranded them completely, and he wants to make sure that they are different. Or that they're differentiated from his previous books.
Yes, so it's a second edition, effectively.
It is.
With new titles, covers, new ISBNs, everything complete, spring clean and revamp of the book. So well done, JP, because that was a brave decision. It's not an easy decision. Yeah. And it can make a big difference to the success of a book, as you found when you changed your covers, didn't you, Dave?
I changed my covers because there was no consistency. It's a series, and there was no consistency between books 1, 2, and 3. They were good covers, but they didn't say this is the third book of this series. Yeah. Whereas now they do,
and they're much more specific about the genre as well.
Yes,
aren't
they are. Yeah, your cover has to tell. Like Debbie's fantastic cozy mysteries set in the Cotswolds.
Yeah,
they do scream that this is exactly what you're going to be getting, and that's exactly what your cover must do.
Yeah,
yeah.
So, but when you do a relaunch like that, it's really important, particularly if you've got a big established readership who are out there poised to grab your next book. You want to make sure, as JP is concerned, that they don't see your new title and think, oh, I haven't read that one yet, let me order that, download it or buy the paperback and find out actually it's a book they've read under a different guise already, which is enormously frustrating. And of course the concern for any author is that could result in some bad reviews and losing the loyalty of an established reader. I don't know how many readers you've already got, JP, or whether you've got the big fan base already, or whether this is still growing.
I would suspect, as it's a rebranding exercise, maybe he hasn't.
Yes.
And that's why he's carried it out. We don't know, but.
So where should you signpost it? You're asking, and actually, I think you can't signpost it too much.
You can everywhere you possibly can.
Yeah. Because you suggested, or should it be on the copyright page or the title page or another page? Actually, I think you've got to make the branding very clear before the reader even gets to the book. So on all the online retail sites, anywhere else that you've got it on your website, on social media images or wherever, you need to have it very clear so that nobody can miss the fact that it was previously published as whatever the title was. It doesn't matter so much about changing the covers, because people change covers all the time, including in the trade press. You see popular authors who sell huge numbers having their whole cover overhauled, or the whole branding overhauled every year or two, even when there's been a perfectly good cover, it seems to me. They still get it overhauled to keep it fresh.
There's a fashion in covers.
Yeah.
And I think Trad in particular like to have their covers as current fashion.
Yeah, all makes nice work for the designing trade as well. And it makes it all exciting. So, but because the title is obviously going to be different, make sure you put it on the blurb on Amazon and other retail sites that you have it on, and above the fold on your Amazon page, so that it's not, because people don't, if you've got a reasonable amount of blurb on there, they won't read to the end. You need to make it where they won't possibly miss it. I would put it on the cover. I would put it anywhere where it's listed. And you can't have it in too many places. The copyright page, I would put it in there just for the sake of neatness, but in fact, very few readers read the copyright page. I can't remember when I last read a copyright page of a book. People are blind to that; they just skip past it and get onto the good bit. So I wouldn't worry about that. And if you've got, if presumably as it's a series, you'll have a list of the other books in the series as well. So I would also make it very clear there, list them with the original title and in brackets perhaps after the new title, so that there can be absolutely no mistake.
Just on that, well, I don't know if you do it, Debbie. One of the things that really annoys me about series is sometimes you get a Rebus book or a Jack Reacher book, and you don't know if it's number 7 in the series or number 12 in the series. So what I always do I always list all my books, including the current one, and I show the current one in bold.
Oh, that's
so
good.
that you can, you know, that's the first book in the series or the fifth book in the series or whatever.
Yeah, even if you've got your series written so that it doesn't matter if you read them out of order. It doesn't matter that much if people read yours out of order, does it? Although there's story development,
no, they're self-contained.
They will still make sense, as with my Sophie Sayers books as well. But it's kind of it's a courtity, really, isn't it? You know, you want to be nice to your readers, make them love you.
Quite often I don't know if I've read that book because some writers, I read every book that comes out, but like you say, sometimes they rebrand them and sometimes they change titles and you think, have I read this one or not?
Yes.
And if it's the last in the series, then no, I haven't.
Yeah. Equally, if you've got a book that is published under different titles in different countries, which is quite unusual in indie sectors, but I know that there are some. I think Jean Burnett's Jane Austen sort of fan fiction type books are published under different titles in America because she's hybrid, so she's got different contracts. So moving on to another sort of marketing related questions is when you put your book into Amazon and Ingram Spark and everywhere else, you get to choose categories that you want it listed under, all to help make your book more discoverable by readers who are looking for books of that kind. And Clifford is a bit frustrated because he's working in a relatively small genre, which is a good thing in lots of ways because it means you are a bigger fish in a smaller pond. You've got less competition in that genre, so you're more likely to get a higher ranking within that genre. But he can't find an exact match, and his particular example that he's an author of fables and parables, and his next book is a collection of 27 moral tales in the tradition of Aesop's fables and children's and household tales. I don't know what that is, which has more complex characters. For example, conscience and reason are the main characters of one story. It sounds a bit like Pilgrim's Progress or something. Sounds very interesting. Truth and ignorance are the main characters of another. It sounds intriguing.
That's right up my line.
How important is it that he gets the precise categories? Is it good enough to get the nearest
While you were
match?
talking about that, I was just considering for categories. The one that most indies are obsessed with is that you can say #1 bestseller.
Yes.
If you reach #1 in a very small category. And a lot of indie authors want to select a category that has little competition in it, so that they can say, you know, I got to #1, #2, and #3 in blah blah blah, you know, morality tales, fables, and so on and so on and so on. So that's one reason. I don't suspect, and coming across reading the question, I don't think that's what Gary is asking about. I don't know how many. The thing is, we think about this from a writer's point of view. As a reader, I have never gone in. The only categories that I'm concerned with when I go as a reader is I will select thrillers and mysteries, or mystery books, or historical mysteries, or historical. You will select the top level category.
Yes.
I would be very, very, very surprised if anybody drilled down more than one, if not 2 layers.
I think authors are much more sensitive about the details of categories than readers are. I mean, I might make up my own search term to look for a book. I was looking for a book about saints the other day for some research I was doing, but I wouldn't have occurred to me to sort of go to look for the category. That's not a reader. That's an author focused thing, a publisher focused thing. But there are ways that you can add if you particularly want a category that you can't find or that isn't brought up in the list of options when you set your book up. You can email Amazon, I think, and say, can you be added to this?
Because there are categories that my book comes up in categories that are not selectable when you're setting your book up. And I'm not sure what the algorithm underlying any of that is, but obviously they're looking at books that have or categories that have a significantly high enough number of books in it to create a category. So they're probably creating categories in the background all the time.
I think it's a very fluid thing, and that's, you know, looking at it from Amazon's perspective, they've got millions of books there, and they're trying to sort them. It's like they're setting up almost like a Dewey Decimal System of their own.
It is,
to try and sort books. So, and that's their prerogative to change it all the time.
So I think what Gary needs to do is to
Clifford.
Sorry, Clifford. So I'm reading Gary there, and this is Clifford. Okay. What Clifford needs to do, Gary can do what he likes. What Clifford needs to do is really have a think about what he wants that category to be.
Yes.
So it's going to be fiction. I don't know if they have morality stories, or it might even be religious or something of that.
Myths and legends, moral tales.
I think they have myths and legends.
Might be sort of religious sector as well.
Because
maybe.
he needs to place it for if he just says I want it in fables or something like that.
Yeah.
Amazon might have a problem with placing it within a higher level catery.
And of course, also keywords. You can add depth with the keywords.
Yeah,
so you
and that's
could have
worth doing.
fables, parables, all the rest of it there. But also, what we come back to here again is going back to talking about covers. I would argue that perhaps, or at least consider, that the categories that you've got it in are less important than getting the cover looking exactly what it needs to say. What it needs to be very clear to the reader at a glance with your thumbnail what kind of category that book would belong to, because that's the way the reader makes a decision as to whether that's the book for them. Now we come on to Gary's question. Sorry. Hello, Gary. And Gary's got an unusual challenge with marketing his book that we don't come across very often. I think we've only come across it once or twice before within ALLi. On legal advice, he says, he's been advised to publish his book under a pseudonym because he wants to keep his distance from the book personally. Now, that's the sort of thing that comes up with memoirs, I think, more than perhaps other sort of misery memoir type things. This isn't a misery memoir. It's a book dealing with sensitive issues about charities working in developing countries, and he needs to distance himself from it. But he wants to market it as well, clearly. He says he's commissioned some marketing activity from a professional specialist whose main focus is to get reviews on NetGalley. At the same time, he says, he points out that NetGalley, only 75% of NetGalley reviewers are US based, but his main focus is British readers because the book is about British charities, even though it's working with countries in the developing world. So he's saying, is NetGalley the only way I can market my book to get UK reviews and to get an audience without paid advertising? And I think we both read that and thought, whoa, big question. Yeah. It's lots of questions. I think, to be honest, Gary, both of us thought, well, actually, if you want to get there, don't start from here. Because let's talk a little bit about what NetGalley is and what it does, and who uses it, why.
NetGalley is primarily used by the trade press. By that I mean newspapers, magazines, bloggers, etc. And it is a conduit where people can pay, and it's not a not insignificant sum. I'm not sure. I think it's quite a lot. To actually have your book listed on NetGalley. And the reviewers, bloggers, etc., will then go onto NetGalley. They will look at the books that interest them in their categories. So again, we're talking about categorizing. And they will request a review copy. So it's a free sample service, really, isn't it? You can choose what you want to review. You don't pick what you want. To some extent, it's a better vehicle than just putting a lot of review copies out, because the people are professional reviewers. That's why they're looking on NetGalley in a lot of cases. However, if Gary has no platform as yet, and if he's just a new writer, and obviously he said he's writing under the pseudonym as well, so he probably does have no name, no platform. Reviewers are unlikely to request his book, I think, because if it was J.K. Rowling, it would be inundated with people requesting review copies. If it's Gary under whatever name he's publishing under, they won't know who he is, and they may or may not want to request it. He would probably be better thinking about the topic, identifying people who write about charities, or charity heads or charity workers, and emailing them or writing to them or contacting them and say, I've written this book about, do his blurb.
Yeah.
And as I always say, your blurb should be no more than 300 words long, but I'm in a minority now. And then these are people who are interested in that subject, and they are quite likely to write a review for him. What he mustn't do is to pay people for reviews, for instance. He can give them a free copy, but no monetary value. If you pay NetGalley, that's fine, because it's a service.
You're paying for listing, really, aren't you?
So rather than list it on NetGalley, which will cost him an awful lot of money, I would suggest he finds out people in charities and see if they would like a copy of the book, and in exchange for a review, if they feel they would want to do one.
I think it would be, I mean, I used to work in the charity sector. I used to work for a children's reading charity called Readathon, and there was I can't remember what it was called, but there was a trade magazine that came around once a week or once a month, I think, and that would be an obvious target. You could look, there'll be international development degrees in all the main universities. There could be students, professors that would be worth approaching there. Other trade magazines, other correspondence on international development. I would have thought it would be pretty easy to come up with a really targeted list of who you want to reach, and also people who have written or reviewed books in that sector as well. Going back to what you're saying about having a platform, even though you're writing under a pseudonym, that doesn't let you off the hook of having a platform. You really need to have a website. Social media as well, if you want to, will be helpful, but at the very least a website where you can explain the proposition of your book, invite people to approach you for review copies. You might want to engage with book funnels so that you can distribute review copies yourself, which cost you next to nothing, because you can distribute them as ebooks in that way. I think NetGalley, are mostly ebooks as well. Lots of other ways of doing that though. And don't be afraid to ask for reviews, because you believe in your book. You've obviously got a lot of expertise and special knowledge in that field. Don't be afraid to put it out there. You don't have to do it by talking to somebody in person. You can do it by email, by post, under your pseudonym. That's fine too. And that would also give you a lot more control than employing a third-party person to do it. So good luck with that, Gary. It sounds like a really worthwhile book in an important sector, important specialist sector. So good luck with that, and come back if you've got any more questions, because we'd love to help.
Just one final point: don't necessarily dismiss the US reviewers.
Yes, good point.
Yes, quite often people will think I thought my book was going to sell much more in the UK than the US. And it's the other way around. 80% of my sales are in the US.
Same with mine.
And it isn't what you think. It's what.
And
don't dismiss them.
And because although you're talking about British charities, you're talking about the whole of the world, all the developing countries, which everybody, one hopes, has an interest in. And it could be that there are lots of people working in charities in other countries who could learn and benefit from your book too. So lots of food for thought there. Continuing on the subject of reviews, Charlotte asks whether she should use another paid service called the Indie Book Reviewers website to get book reviews for her debut novel called Dolphin Days. Sounds fun. And she says, or should I just let Amazon do it? If only Amazon would do everything for us, that would make life easy, Charlotte.
One day.
Talking a little bit more about reviews, generally, we'd say it's never worth paying for reviews. You can spend a lot of money there without much result and with no guarantees that you will get reviews or the kind of reviews that perhaps you're looking for either. So the same advice that we've just been talking about for Gary really applies to you, Charlotte, and your book about Dolphin Days. Look for people who are likely to be in the market for your book, who would be interested, who have reviewed other similar books. A lot of frequent reviewers on Amazon positively welcome approaches with new books to review. So have a look at the reviewers of other books, particularly if they've written nice reviews, the kind that you like on your book, and approach them directly with a polite letter.
One thing worth knowing is if you look at a review on Amazon and then you look at the reviewer's name.
Yeah.
If they don't mind being approached, they will have their email
Yes.
listed.
Yeah.
And so make a note of that.
Yes.
And look for reviewers of books very similar to your own. Don't go and go completely.
And when you approach them, make sure it's a really nice personal approach. Don't just build a mailing list and send the same letter to 100 people. I do a lot of reviews. I'm usually floating around sort of top 1,000 Amazon reviewers, and if anybody sends me a request saying, oh, please review my book, it's great, you know, something really that they haven't bothered with, then I just don't, half the time I won't even reply beyond saying no thanks. But if you write a really personal review, a really personal request showing that you've read and appreciated what that person likes to read, then that will make a big difference. And I've actually struck up some really nice friendships with people who have approached me that way. Dawn Brooks, who's now an ALLi member, who's written memoirs about her nursing. She's become quite a good chum online, and that started out with a very, very lovely approach from her, which is great.
I've got a guy in the States who's called Billy Bob, and he always insists he has every one of my new books. Oh,
that's nice. Yeah, it's great fun, isn't it? It is such fun. Final question. Well, two very quick questions. Moving on to promotion, trying to promote your book and get specific sales with specific campaigns. Nat says he's obviously done his homework. He's read lots of books about Facebook ads, read lots of information. He's taking a course, and he still finds the entire subject of Facebook ads daunting. He said nobody seems to offer simple, straightforward directions on how to set up simple ads. I would pay someone to get me started. No need to pay.
No.
That because we have the very man here who's written a great post on the ALLi blog about it. It is. You were saying you could talk forever about it.
I could talk forever about it.
You've also talked it.
I have,
very briefly.
I will. I'll try and talk very briefly because we haven't got much time left. Facebook ads can be daunting, but the thing to remember is that they're not daunting. They can be, and I think the more you read about them, and maybe the more courses you do about them, you can confuse yourself with, there's all this I can do. What do I have to do? Do I have to put codes in? Do I have to have pixels, they're called, to track all my sales? I don't do any of that. I just do an ad and I put it up there, and if it makes me money, I don't care. And I can tell because I've cut back on my advertising coming up to Christmas, and my sales have fallen. So I can see a direct correlation between how much I spend and how much it affects my sales. So it does work. But there's just a few things you have to get right. And as Debbie says, if you search on the self-publishing advice website for Facebook ads, my little 20-minute mini course will come up.
Yeah, it's really
good. If you work through that, and probably somebody said they watched it 4 or 5 times, because I can talk quite fast sometimes if I want to get something done. Go through it, and it will give you the absolute essentials and basics that you need, and a couple of tips of, use oranges if you can get them, which is a silly thing, but it seems to work.
And you've also posted about the same post is about Amazon ads as well.
I have,
So it's a really good one. It's good for comparing and contrasting.
I did a course in Zurich in November, a whole day course on how to market your book. Teaching the course. Writing to Win, it was called, which I thought was a great title. But I did a recording for that as well. So at some point I'm going to make that available.
Oh, great.
In fact, the whole course is going to be online.
Terrific. Oh, that's
might even become a book.
For. Oh gosh, that's fabulous. Yeah, good for you. That would be well worth reading. There's also another great post on the ALLi blog by G.D. Harper, who gives a case study of how he fine-tuned an advert for his Scottish thriller. Here's another chap. I just thought here's another chap who I met because he sent me a really lovely email asking if I'd review his book. Great book too. He's shared that in great detail. So look up G.D. Harper and Facebook on the ad as well. Read David's first. I think he's a Facebook friend as well. Yeah. So read David's post first, and then G.D. Harper's will add more refinement. Final question, running an author business. We're all thinking about how we're going to run our author business in 2018. And we've got a simple question with a very satisfying and simple answer to round up with. K.E. Lanning asks, will ALLi still have the discounts with Ingram Spark in 2018 like we had in 2017? Yes.
Yes.
Is the answer to that. And for people who aren't members of ALLi, I ought to explain that as a paid up member of ALLi, you have access to a whole range of deals and discounts that are members only. You get a membership code to access all of these things. Lots of members say they more than cover their membership fee, which we in any case keep very affordable, by the discounts that they get on Ingram Spark alone. If you're publishing even one book a year, you can make it worth your while. And the discounts, those discounts are you get free setup and free revisions, which is worth lots of money, particularly if you're the kind who revises.
Some people hate it once they publish the book.
Yes. So so a big thanks to Ingram Spark and all our valued partner members who offer those discounts. If you want to find out more about the many reasons to join ALLi, if you're not already part of our network, go to our membership website, which is different from the blog. The membership website is www.allianceindependentauthors.org, and you'll find out there, and you'll be able to join on there. So that wraps up all our questions this time around.
Welcome to 2018, and I think it's going to be a really exciting year for indie authors.
I think
it's going to be a pivotal year for indie authors.
I think so. I've just been setting up lots of blog posts over Christmas, over the holiday period, looking back at all the achievements of authors, all the best of our posts on the blog for the whole year, the best of our Indie Author Fringe conference talks, which you can still access to help you kick off your 2018 to a good start. And I know by the time Orna is also writing posts looking back and looking forward to the new year. So if you haven't caught up with our blog yet for the start of January, go over and read it now, and you'll be raring to go as we are.
Thank you.
So thank you. Bye bye.